Coming up today, Koreans in 4 districts dotted around the country head to the polls today for some crunch by-elections that might show us what the public thinks about the bribery list scandal that has embroiled the ruling party. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe refuses again to say sorry for his country's sexual enslavement of women during World War II, continuing with his now tried and tested statement about feeling remorse for human trafficking. Plus, Korea's biggest companies are feeling better about their business outlook, but the country's smaller firms aren't feeling as optimistic, despite signs of a gradual economic recovery. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 29th of April. You're tuned into our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, it's crunch time in local politics as today, April 29th, is by-elections day here in Korea. The by-elections are being held in 4 districts, 1 in Seoul, 1 in Gyeonggi-do Province, 1 in Incheon, and 1 in the southwestern city of Gwangju. To tell us more, we connect to our Ji Myung-gil, who is standing by at a polling station in Seoul's Gwanak-bi district. Myung-gil.
Hi, Mark. A total of 309 polling stations opened at 6 a.m. this morning, and people have been coming here to cast their ballots this morning. And it's been kind of quiet this morning. As you can see, people have been coming and going steadily. As well as this district in Gwanak-bi in Seoul, by-elections are also happening in Gyeonggi-do Province, Incheon, and a one in the southwestern city of Jeollab Province of Gwangju. Polling stations close at 8 p.m. tonight, and the results should start filtering through from around 10 p.m. According to Korea's National Election Commission, more than 710,000 people are eligible to vote in the 4 districts. A 2-day early voting period was held last Friday and Saturday for those who aren't able to make it out today. The voter turnout for that was 7.6%, which is slightly lower than the previous by-elections, which took place last July.
Well, Myung-gil, it's certainly going to be interesting to see what kind of turnout we see today. But the nation's 2 main rival parties are desperate to do well in these polls because it comes as the ruling party is mired in this big scandal.
That's right, Mark. These by-elections are very important for both the ruling Central Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. Watchers say today's by-election is a testbed for public sentiment, as the nation has been gripped by a snowballing bribery scandal allegedly involving President Park's aides and ruling party lawmakers. Also, general elections are due around this time next year, so that's in the back of the party's minds as well. The bribery scandal has caused support to cool for this conservative ruling party, and the Liberal MPAD is calling for the public to make a judgment on the incumbent administration with their votes. These by-elections are also garnering extra attention as they are the first elections that pit the ruling Central Party's chairman Kim Moo-sung against MPAD chairman Moon Jae-in. Many are saying that this is a key test of their leadership, but it could be also gauge their capacity as potential presidential candidates in 2017. Moon, of course, ran and lost against President Park Geun-hye in 2012.
And we hear that both parties are aiming to win at least 2 of the 4 districts. But among the 4, which is the most hotly contested?
Well, Mark, the district I'm in now, the Gwanak-bi in Seoul, is being seen as one to be watched. And not only is this the only by-election district that is being held in the capital, but there is also a very strong independent candidate running. So it has worried the MPAD that it could actually think it might split the Liberal votes and potentially let the Central Party in the back door. Gwangju's Hogubi is widely expected to go to the main opposition. The Liberal Party has won this seat for 13 straight elections, so it looks almost certain they will hold that area. Rival party candidates are neck and neck in Gwangabi in Incheon and Jungwon in Seongnam, Gyeonggi-do province. So it's really hard to predict who is going to be happiest when the results are out tonight. This has been Ji Myung-gil reporting live from Shinseong Elementary School in Seoul's Gwanakbi district.
Now, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, currently on a week-long trip to the United States, held a joint press conference with US President Barack Obama on Tuesday. There, he was asked about the issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women from Korea, China and other nations, but many were left deeply dissatisfied with his answer. Hwang Sang-yi reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe again offered no apologies to the victims of Japan's wartime system of sexual slavery during a press conference in Washington on Tuesday. Rather, he merely repeated the remarks he made a day earlier.
On the issue of comfort women, I am deeply pained to think about the comfort women who experienced immeasurable pain and suffering as a result of victimization due to human trafficking.
While the Japanese leader fell short of apologizing himself, he said he would uphold a landmark apology given to the victims more than 20 years ago.
This is a feeling that I share equally with my predecessors. The Abe cabinet upholds the Kono statement and has no intention to revise it.
In 1993, the Kono statement acknowledged for the first time that the victims were recruited against their own will by the Japanese military. Some 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve Japanese troops at military brothels during World War II. So far, Abe has denied Japan's involvement in what he calls human trafficking. But experts say Abe's attitude could be counterproductive, as his attempts to whitewash history only serve to increase international awareness of the issue.
It's only going to make people ask more questions about it, right? It's not going to silence people either inside Japan or anywhere in the world, because that's not how questioning, thinking, research works. Everybody's going to want to know more.
Tuesday's joint press conference with President Obama was Abe's second public speech since arriving in the U.S. earlier this week. All eyes are on his final public speech in Washington on Wednesday, where he will be addressing a joint session of U.S. Congress, although most doubt he'll have a change of heart and issue a surprise apology there. Hwang Sang-yi, Arirang News.
The United States and Japan have agreed to work together for an early conclusion of negotiations to forge a massive Asia-Pacific free trade deal known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. Speaking after their summit talks in Washington on Tuesday, US President Barack Obama and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said the two sides have already made significant progress on the matter, but noted that hurdles remain to reaching a breakthrough. Obama also stressed that Washington's commitment to Japan's security is absolute, and the recently inked security cooperation guideline covers all territories under Japan's administration, including the disputed East China Sea islands known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China. The two leaders also confirmed cooperation on North Korea issues such as nuclear and missile programs and the abduction of Japanese nationals by North Korean agents. US experts are encouraging the international community to keep raising the issue of North Korea's dire human rights situation in order to tackle the atrocities. Speaking at a Heritage Foundation forum in Washington on Tuesday, human rights lawyer Jared Genser said the world should not sit still, knowing North Koreans are falling victim to such grave violations. Also taking part in the forum, Lee Sung-yoon, who is a professor at the Fletcher School, pointed out how Pyongyang's attitude began to change after the UN Commission of Inquiry released a highly critical report last year on the regime's human rights abuses. Other panelists echoed those views, saying that continuously raising objections could eventually prompt the North to change its ways. Back here in South Korea, and the majority of manufacturing companies remain pessimistic about their business conditions for May, with small companies less optimistic than the large conglomerates. The Bank of Korea says the business sentiment index for May rose by 2 points to 82. This compared with 80 for April. While conglomerates recorded a 5-point increase, small and mid-sized companies' sentiment remained frosty, showing the same level as the month before. Now, this index measures manufacturing companies' outlook on their business conditions for the coming month. An index reading below 100 indicates businesses feel negative about operating conditions. Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics has seen its net profit for the first quarter plunge nearly 39% on weak smartphone sales. According to a filing released on Wednesday, Samsung's net income was $4.3 billion in the January to March period. That's a drop of nearly $3 billion from the year before. Still, the company's first quarter earnings represent a gain of 13% from the previous quarter and its strongest performance in 3 quarters, signaling that it's starting to somewhat rebound from its worst earnings in 3 years. In 2014, company officials attributed the on-quarter gain to improving smartphone sales in the first quarter and brisk chip sales. Now, fueled by a steady influx of tourists, Korea's duty-free sector is one of the few industries relatively unaffected by the sluggish economy we're feeling here in Korea. And apart from the conventional duty-free shops at airports, the so-called urban duty-free market is seen as a promising cash cow. Gonsoa reports.
Korea's duty-free businesses raked in some $7.8 billion last year, up nearly 22% from the previous year. While the airport duty-free industry saw an on-year sales increase of roughly 6%, more noteworthy is the jump in urban duty-free sales, which skyrocketed by more than 32%. Chinese tourists are a steady driver of growth in the industry, and industry watchers say their purchases could push this year's sales total up to $8.4 billion. In Seoul, there are 6 urban duty-free stores, but 7 more companies are getting ready to jump in after the government offered them the chance to expand their business. Competition is getting fierce as bidding for 3 urban duty-free stores in Seoul is scheduled to begin on June 1st.
We established Shinsegae DF, a subsidiary that focuses only on the duty-free market, which will be the starting point for us to compete with global firms in the long term.
We're planning to create Korea's biggest duty-free store by turning 4 floors or 12,000 square meters of our iPark Mall into a tourist attraction.
One of the biggest advantages for companies seeking to open duty-free shops outside the airport is they can avoid the high rental fees, which can veer into the billion-dollar range. But there are already concerns that the market may not be an infinite one.
China's economy is showing signs of slowing down. If that becomes more serious, the Chinese government will likely try to turn overseas consumption into domestic consumption.
Experts advise companies seeking to get into the industry to focus on risk management and avoid overinvesting in the early stages. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The death toll from last weekend's devastating earthquake in Nepal has surpassed 5,000, with nearly 11,000 more injured. Officials say it's impossible to tell how many bodies remain buried, with landslides and weather conditions hindering rescue efforts there. The country's Prime Minister said the death toll could reach 10,000, as information on the damage to remote villages and towns has yet to come in. According to the United Nations, 8 million people were affected by Saturday's 7.8 magnitude quake, and 1.4 million are in need of food. International aid has begun arriving, but local officials say the challenge is getting the supplies further into the country to the communities in need. And that devastating earthquake in Nepal sent ripples of shock and grief around the world, including here in Korea, with the country's small Nepali community. Many are desperately awaiting a phone call from home, letting them know their family members are safe. Shin Se-min has more.
One by one, they say goodbye. These Nepali men and women have gathered to pay respect to the lives lost in one of the strongest quakes to hit their home country. Among them is Ang Tendi Shepra, who came to Korea 7 months ago. He says the quake broke his 11-year-old son's leg and took the lives of 10 of his friends who he used to climb Mount Everest with.
I haven't been able to talk to my son since the quake. I used to be on the phone with him twice a day. It's been hard for me.
Like Shepra's family, misfortune has hit the homes of thousands like his. Arjun Hamal is a cook at a local restaurant. His wife and 2 children are now refugees camping out in tent shelters in Kathmandu, fearing their cracked home will collapse at any moment.
Little bit cracked my home, and then they are sleeping outside, not any electrical, not a water, and then not a food, little bit difficult.
Although he confirmed that his family members are safe, he is far from relieved as he can't get back to them during this tough time. Some 28,000 Nepalis are either working or studying in Korea. And while they may be far from home, helping hands are busily working to console and help them as they deal with their loss. The Embassy of Nepal in Seoul says it has been receiving an outpouring of support from locals and civic groups.
I'm meeting this afternoon with the executive director of the Korean Airlines. He is the vice president of the airlines as well, and I will take up the matters regarding the transportation of the relief materials and some other means of assistance, whatever they can extend to us.
Organizations in Korea have begun collecting money and daily necessities to send to Nepal.
Every little bit helps for those pulling out bodies or survivors trying to cope with the situation. Everything from medical kits, batteries, everything is of help for those people in desperate need.
Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Goodbye.